Hi, I'll continue with the chapter on the Anschlag with paragraph 6. In Karl Philipp Emanuel Bach's Versuch über die wahre Art, das Klavier zu spielen. Außer diesem Falle kann der Anschlag mit dem Törtchensprunge bei allen unter Figur 82 befindlichen Exempeln ebenfalls statthaben. Man findet ihn auch bei Einzelnoten zwischen Pausen, Figur 84a, und bei der Wiederholung eines Tones vor einer fallenden Sekunde, B. Bei dieser Wiederholung vor dem heruntersteigenden Intervall ist er natürlicher als der Doppelschlag, so wie dieser besser tut vor einer steigenden Sekunde. Hiernächst kann der Anschlag in langsamem Tempo auch sehr wohl gebraucht werden, indem er das Dissonierende der überflüssigen Sekunde besser vermindert als der Doppelschlag, C. Man braucht ihn ferner vor einer steigenden Sekunde, D, und Septime, E. Ingleichen vor einem Vorschlage vor einer fallenden Sekunde, F. Man merke überhaupt, dass der Anschlag besser tut, wenn nachher die Melodie fällt, als wenn sie steigt. Bloß die Wiederholung einer mit dem Anschlag verzierten Note und ein langsames Tempo können hierinnen eine Ausnahme machen, G. And there's an appendix, an addition that Bach made to the 1787 edition. And here it is. Dieser Anschlag darf nicht vor einer Note gebraucht werden, worauf eine steigende Sekunde folgt. Zum Exempel. Here we are going to see just how useful and versatile the Anschlag is. The case Bach is referring to at the beginning of the paragraph is the example of the Anschlag with the jump of a third. So, the second type of Anschlag from the previous paragraph's figure 83, which is presenting the actual seat of that Anschlag, where no other ornament can be skillfully brought in its place, apart from the short appoggiatura, that is. Here's paragraph 15 from the chapter on appoggiaturas, some of it. Wenn ein Ton eine Sekunde steigt und alsdann wieder zurückgeht, es mag nun dieser Rückgang durch eine Hauptnote, Tab 4, Figur 10, oder durch einen neuen Vorschlag geschehen, A, so entsteht vor der mittelsten Note auch leicht ein kurzer Vorschlag. So, a short appoggiatura can be used for figure 83. Geschicklich. When Bach says, Figure 83 zeigt uns den eigentlichen Sitz dieses Anschlages, in dem keine andere Manier stattdessen geschicklich angebracht werden kann, might be referring to the ornaments that display dexterity. if Bach hadn't overlooked the short appoggiatura when he was saying that. So he might be differentiating between the short appoggiatura and ornaments consisting of more notes. Because I'm not assuming Bach overlooked the short appoggiatura. So, aside from figure 83, Bach is saying the second kind of Anschlag, the Anschlag with the jump of a third, can also be used in all the examples of figure 82. Figure 82 presents examples where the Anschlag comes in with leaps. We see leaps of a minor and major third. A perfect fourth. A perfect and diminished fifth. And a minor sixth. So, the second kind of Anschlag, or the Anschlag 2 as I could call it, can be used with leaps. That is worth keeping in mind, especially at a higher up level. This Anschlag 2 can also occur with individual notes between rests. Bach shows this in figure 84a. So far, this Anschlag is the only ornament where he has specifically stated such. Even though one will encounter individual notes between rests decorated with a short appoggiatura, as is in K279, Mozart's first sonata in C major, in bars 27 and 28, where Mozart decorates such notes with a short appoggiatura from below. Bach specifically stating such could hint that he had a distinct awareness of this use of the Anschlag in his mind. Perhaps because it had been particularly useful, effective, or satisfying in those situations. As far as ornaments and rests are concerned, he said in paragraph 13 from the chapter on appoggiaturas that the short appoggiatura can come with a fast note before a cut. And he shows that with figure 8d. the D, the note D, in that figure. The D is the cut, the Einschnitt. And the E is the fast note coming before it. An Einschnitt is likely to be followed by a rest. Figure 83 is also an Einschnitt, by the way. And in the course of my videos, it's figured out what an Einschnitt actually is. Bach has said in paragraph 9 from the chapter on mordants that the short mordant can come with the notes before a rest. We can see that in figure 75E and figure 75F. In paragraph 3 from the chapter on mordants, his alternate version of the short mordant, when it is to be completely short, he says comes ex abrupto, without connection. That's what he said regarding ornaments and rests. So, the Anschlag could be kept in mind when confronted with individual notes between rests. It provides, with the speed or the sharpness, die Schärfe, a weight in such cases that might have been desired from another ornament, like said mordant, but that couldn't be satisfactorily achieved with it. Hence the alternate version of the short mordant. The Anschlag could be kept in mind with respect to varying a repeat or embellishing a fermata. All the information Bach provides on where ornaments can be used gives a person the means to incorporate ornaments into their improvisation if they're coming up with a, like a cadenza or embellishing a fermata, which what that is basically a cadenza. And to be able to incorporate ornaments into that gives it a glance or a bit of flash, which is what you want in like embellishing a fermata is basically like a guitar solo or any instrumental solo. So all that, plus in varying a repeat, the information Bach is providing on where ornaments can be used means you know where you can use each ornament. So not only do you get to use that ornament, but you also get to use it in its proper place. In K279, in bars 27 and 28, one could try playing the forte C with an Anschlag instead of the short appoggiatura from below, and see how well it serves the forte. The Anschlag would be played with a D natural. Also, variety in ornamentation can not only help the phrase, but I would go so far as to say it can also make the phrase. Incidentally, at the beginning of bar 27, Mozart specifically indicated an Anschlag. As I go on to show some of the many places in Mozart's sonatas for which the Anschlag is the only ornament that can be skillfully used, which are places the roll of honour will play instead their lovely little trills, their little shakes or mordants or upper mordants. Those roll of honour people who want to cling to their Lieblich and Trillerchen for dear life, who don't want anything to come between them and their precious, could point to that and say, see, when Mozart wants an Anschlag, he indicates it. Great research, roll of honour. That Anschlag together with its repeat in the recapitulation, is the only time Mozart specifically indicated an Anschlag in all his sonatas, as they were reproduced by G. Henley Verlag. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they are the only ones I could find on my perusal. So, in the two books of them. Does that mean in his entire piano sonata output, spanning his entire career, Mozart only wanted one Anschlag? One. Bach covered 7 classes of ornament in 7 chapters in the section on ornamentation. He covered the appoggiaturas, trills, braces, or what the Roll of Honour incorrectly refer to as turns, mordents, Anschlags, slides or von den Schleifern, and the Schneller, which will be the upper mordent. They translate to a rich and varied performance as far as the utilization of standard ornaments is concerned. So a refined use of the basic vocabulary, so to speak. Compare that to the Roll of Honour's shakes and turns. Did Mozart really, bar that one exception, omit one of those 7 and reduce his basic vocabulary from 7 to 6? Did Mozart go around with a limited vocabulary? As limited as that of the mediocrity who play him today, or in the case of Alfred Brendel, who played him yesterday. Mediocrity is a symptom of the cage. All its captives are doomed to mediocrity, which doesn't reflect their potential. It doesn't reflect their potential. It reflects their reality. It reflects the reality of the cage. If you want to escape mediocrity, you have to escape the cage. Mediocrity does not exist in the world of music. And I wouldn't be saying these things if I wasn't providing the means to escape the cage. AC fingering, the AC fingering system and its finger position will get you out of the cage and in a position where you can start to discover and enter the world of music. The AC fingering system is the full solution to fingering. For the first time in the history of keyboard music, or in the history of keyboard instruments, fingering has been fully solved. AC fingering is that solution. No one can solve fingering without coming up with the AC fingering system. And you won't hear, you'll see all over YouTube, everywhere, all these claims, like these tips to improve speed, or all these claims. Nobody claims, and they're all bogus. So they do it to get attention, to attract people. None of them claim to have solved fingering. And because they haven't solved fingering, shouldn't really stop them, because it doesn't stop them from making all those other claims. Why does nobody claim to have solved fingering? Because nobody knows that there is such a thing. So when I say I solved fingering, I'm not jumping on the bandwagon because there is no bandwagon. Nobody says it, and nobody would even think of saying it because nobody can. It doesn't exist. The conception that fingering is something that can be solved or is something that's waiting for a full solution. And I say it because I've done it. That's why I say it. I'm not saying it because I saw somebody else saying it and I'm copying them. I'm saying it because that's what I've done. So I make the claim to have solved fingering. Because if I hadn't solved fingering, I probably would have never thought that one could make a claim to have solved fingering. And the solution has the same effect on everybody. And you can just consider the seismic influence or impact solutions have had in other fields. If you want to consider what the solution to fingering might mean for music. Bach said, at the start of the chapter on fingering, he gave the trinity of piano playing, and the trinity is fingering, ornamentation, and ornamentation extends way beyond, just like the trills and the shakes, this basic vocabulary. So fingering, ornamentation, and the good performance. And he says these three elements are so inextricably linked that the one without the other can neither exist nor be permitted. AC fingering takes that place in that trinity. Bach says complete proficiency depends on correct fingering. AC fingering is the full solution to fingering. Bach said that a mediocre musician will always outperform the best musician if that mediocre player has correct fingering, and if the best musician with his incorrect fingering has to allow himself to be heard against his better judgment. Meaning the best musician will know those places where his playing doesn't match his understanding of how that phrase or that bit is meant to sound. So fingering is the key, and its finger position is the key to complete proficiency. And so when you're talking about this full solution to fingering, you're talking about a level of proficiency that cannot be surpassed. So I wouldn't be saying those things if I wasn't sharing with you the means to escape the cage. And think of, and you might think I'm so negative, but I'm extremely positive because I give the answers. Knowledge is power, and I am empowering you. And think of the lesson, in The Lord of the Rings, in the Two Towers, when Gandalf, I saw in the bonus footage, there's King Theoden whose mind has been poisoned. And there Gandalf comes along and he gives these unpleasant truths. He doesn't he tells him things that are difficult to hear. Whereas Wormtongue is feeding him all these sugar-coated stuff. He's being his best friend while poisoning his mind. The things that are good for you are not always sickly sweet. We are seeing the extent to which the Anschlag can be used in this paragraph. So why did Mozart indicate that Anschlag and none of the others, if there were others? In the places I am going to show and have shown, the Anschlag is the only ornament that can be skillfully used. Mozart adds a TR sign to those places, knowing there will be no ambiguity and that the literate musician with a basic vocabulary will play an Anschlag. Here's paragraph 18 from the chapter on the brace. Der Mangel an Kennzeichen der Manieren außer unserem Instrumente nötigt also die Komponisten oft, das Zeichen des Theorpunkt dahin zu setzen, wo der Triller entweder wegen der Geschwindigkeit kaum möglich oder wegen der Schleifung ungeschickt ist. Bar 27 is in both points not such a case. So the trill is not hardly possible because of the speed in bar 27, nor is it clumsy because of the slurring or legato. So in bar 27 is in both points not such a case, and a T or sign could cause confusion as to which ornament Mozart wanted, if he didn't want an actual trill. So, to avoid confusion, Mozart indicated the Anschlag specifically. This also serves as proof that Mozart used the Anschlag. Would it not be irrational to think that, in all his piano sonatas, would be the only time he would want such an irreplaceable, indispensable, versatile, and effective ornament? One can see the inverse achievement it was for the roll of honour to replace such an ornament and effectively wipe all trace of its existence from the education it provides its victims and from the interpretations it presents the public, if you want to call them that. It almost requires a willful ignorance, and also the ability of the cage to plunge its captives into the depths of ignorance without them realizing it. So, Mozart indicated the Anschlag in a case where other ornaments could as well have been used. Okay, I'll leave it at that for this video, and I'll pick up where I left off in the next. Thanks. Bye.